Star people and flying shields are familiar notions inside the Native American tribes. Cultures with a deep understanding of the metaphysical planes of existence still recall a remote period in time when humans freely interacted with, quote, people from the stars, end quote. That means, of course, extraterrestrial visitors, and it all happened on this planet we call our home. Prior to the merciless conquest of the Americans by the rapacious Europeans, there were various cultures in these areas not sharing the beliefs of the colonialists, but instead possessing unique belief systems as well as precious ancient knowledge. Much of this information had been eradicated by the colonialists of that era, but several ideologies were fortunate enough to surpass the test of time. They're now offering bewildering insight since these ancient concepts are contradictory to the established Western paradigm. Surviving tribes speak of the star people, a term referred to various beings of otherworldly origins. They even describe their appearances, who at some point in time descended from the sky in order to share some of their wisdom with the early inhabitants of the earth worthy of their gifts of knowledge. These time-worn peoples established contact with diverse species of advanced extraterrestrials, proof of this standing the multitude of myths depicting such encounters. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. Let's keep in mind Genesis 6, the sons of God and the daughters of men, that these fallen angels, who were not supposed to, of course, have interaction with humans, did so anyway. They were on some kind of type of a mutiny, and they did what they each wanted to do. But going back to the star people of the Native American tribes, although disconnected by millenary periods of time, former cultures of the Americas speak of flying objects and technology so advanced that it could have been confused with magic. The narratives of the Native American tribes are particularly luxuriant in details. They write, "Many people tell of star people who came to us many generations ago." This is what Richard Wagamesi of the Wabasi Mung First People writes. He says the star people brought spiritual teachings and stories and maps of the cosmos, and they offered these freely. They were kind, loving, and set a great example, and when they left us, my people say, there was a loneliness like no other. And he goes on to say, if star people did come to the Ojibwe, where did they go? Where did they come from? Who brought teachings to them? What scientific magic did they own that allowed them to take such an incredible journey? And is it possible for us, he asks. Now, the Hopi Indians, no, they owe much of their cultural heritage to their ancestors who came, they say, from the Pleiades. And much of their lifestyle seems an analog to the depicted attitude of those aliens. Does this prove their origin myths hold more truth than fiction? It could very well be the case. The Dakota people allude to the same star cluster, the Pleiades, as a place from where their ancestors had arrived. Not far from them are the Cree, who believe that at some point in remote history, their founding fathers descended from the stars, just that in spirit form, and have later materialized into human beings. And let's remember, this is what the Aborigines of Australia also believe, that their ancestors came from the stars. Now, the Lakota natives speak of mystical celestial entities which developed energy shields around them whenever transcending into the material world. They were often seen as luminous orbs of light and would sometimes adopt gifted children to journey with them across the cosmos. This entire concept of alien visitors is not at all new or unknown to the Native Americans, but they perceive this topic from a more spiritual point of view than U.S. Westerners. Authors of Plains Cree Stephanie Witunu explains this more thoroughly in a UFO Digest article. And she says, "My people gave far greater attention to the seeking of the spiritual understanding of things rather than going after the truth as people from dominant cultures do. This is part of the reason why we tend to stand back and view or listen at first, rather than bear in with questions or take the hard, direct approach." The tightness of Wutani's community allowed him to tend to lend an ear to the story of his elders, which comprised information that had been passed down one generation after another. The stories often reminded of distant relations and star people living among the stars, and had established contact with his tribe, saying, "Far from being anything to be feared, star people was just another term I grew up with around." This is what Wutani said in his paper. He said, "I remember listening in awe and fascination at the thought of us having relations that lived off and outside our world, and sometimes spoke to them in my silent moments at night. I wanted to know who they were and what they looked like, if they had families like us, and so on." It wasn't until my later teens that I discovered that people from the dominant culture were talking about the same people as my elders did, though each side's sense of perception of these people seemed radically different from one another. So could Wutani's words be the product of our modern day understanding of extraterrestrials combined with the imaginative nature of his elderly's tales? It could be, but the fact that Native Americans have been talking about flying shields since forever speaks in favor of another reality. Before the UFO phenomenon became a widespread media phenomenon, the Oglala Sioux mystic known as Black Eagle, who lived between 1863 and 1950, who had cruised along Buffalo Bill during his Wild West show, depicted one of his UFO encounters, proving that such meetings were not just some isolated event, but they were instead embedded into the lives and culture of the American Indians, the Native Americans. He said, "So when I went to Vision Quest, that disc came from above. The scientists call that an unidentified flying object, but that's a joke, see? Because they are not trained. They lost contact with the wisdom, power, and gift. So that disc landed on top of me. It was concave, and there was another on top of that. It was silent, but it lit and luminesced like neon lights. Then these little people came, but each little group spoke a different language. They could read minds, and I could read their minds. I could read them. So there was silent communication. You could read it like when you read silent symbols in a book. So we were able to communicate. They are human, so I welcomed them. I said, 'Welcome, welcome.'" There's no denial that all Native American tribes maintain a vigorous bond with Mother Earth. They refer to themselves as the original caretakers of the earth and condemn the Western path towards inevitable destruction. According to them, the bond between this planet and her children has been severely disrupted, and this uprooting phenomenon humans are experiencing right now is the exact reason why it has become so hard to maintain connection with the star people. At the same time, they offer a key to unlock this ancient and sacred union between the ETs and ourselves. It comes in the form of a global awakening, a shift in consciousness that would make us once again worthy of reaching out or being reached by these advanced beings. This may sound appalling, or I should say appealing, somehow realistic in the future, but I'm afraid that all Earth's creatures are in the same boat, and the powers that be have all the necessary means to blow an irreparable hole through the deck, serving us all a one-way ticket to the blackness of space. And there are two videos embedded in this article if you'd like to listen to him. This is by Alien Policy on Humans Are Free. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support.